Yes, I have changed math again. Yes, it's not usually a good idea to change math curriculums, let alone change math 3 times in the same year. Stick around if you want to hear about my experience and what we are using now. So, we started off homeschooling using Singapore math, specifically primary mathematics, standard edition and US edition, and then for my younger daughter, dimensions math. And my older daughter has been doing primary mathematics for 4 years, up until this year, and my younger daughter was doing dimensions. And we changed because we came to a bump in the road we just could not overcome in fractions. I was not finding a better way to teach it that she could understand within that curriculum. And no matter how much we just stuck there and sat there for weeks upon weeks, fractions was only taught over maybe 2 weeks or so at that time. It moves on forward to review it again, of course, but during the initial first lesson of fractions, it lasted about 2 to 3 weeks. And then it was moving on. So we just stayed there, and I just kept coming up with my own practice question after practice question. Now, I won't go into this much detail because I do have another video not too long ago where we then switched to beauty and truth. So if you go back to my beauty and truth video, you'll see all the things we love about it, and none of that has changed. I do love beauty and truth. I find it very rigorous. In fact, I will even admit that my daughter thrived in beauty and truth more than what we are currently using, but what we are currently using is working. So the only reason I switched to what I am using now is because when I first signed up with Beauty and Truth, on their website, they had images and links for math curriculum all the way up to the high school years. And there was a picture and an image and all the names of the curriculum, like pre-calculus, calculus, geometry, all these things. And then when I took a closer look after we had already been doing it for a few months, just to go and take a look at it, I realized they were all coming soon, that none of them actually existed yet. And that while they are gradually adding more and more into their program, there is a plan for all those things to happen, haven't happened yet, and there is no known time as to how quickly those things will be put into place. Now, my daughter will only have 1 more year with Beauty and Truth, and then she would be then possibly stuck at, we would have to find another curriculum. And I liked the idea of finding a math curriculum that works and sticking with it to as far as you can go, to the end if possible, all the way to high school would be amazing. And often most curriculum do end by the middle school grades, and then you have to choose something else for high school. That's pretty typical for a lot of homeschooling curriculum. But a lot of the newer ones out there only go up to certain grades, and then you have to find something else. For example, another one recently that a lot of people are talking about that is Math with Confidence, and right now they have only released up until grade 4. So those types of curriculum just don't work for us. I really don't want to have to figure out how to teach. Each math curriculum really teach mathematics, although math is math, they are taught in different ways. And how your child gets used to understanding how it's taught can really make or break your year in mathematics. Now, I do think that it's a good idea to try out different curriculum and even be using a few different math curriculum all at the same time, because it's good to understand and know different ways of doing math. So that is helpful, but it is difficult when the one that you are using is done, and then you have to figure out how to kind of learn a different way of doing math in some ways all over again. So Beauty and Truth, when I looked back at it and reflected, what was it that I really loved about it? Well, I do love the way that the lessons are taught and the lessons are short. But specifically what I loved about it was how gradual they studied each topic. For example, they first had to understand what a fraction was, and then the next lesson or even the next week might have just been, okay, let's look at what half means. Now let's look at what 1/4 means. Now let's add up a few quarters, and now you've got 2/4 is a half, and 3/4, and so they were gradually adding on top of what they knew about fractions. So gradually, it really was this almost the full year approach of just doing fractions. And I found out that another math curriculum does math this way as well. And you may be familiar with it, but it is called MathUSee. There are no other math curriculum out there like MathUSee. MathUSee takes one math function, one concept in math, and starts at the very, very, very beginning, and then gradually breaks it down and continuing to add and add and add and add and build and build and build on top of that concept until you go from the very basic to the farthest level in that topic, that you have fully mastered the whole concept to as complex as it's going to get for the elementary and middle school grades. You go to the full capacity. And that is how MathUSee works. So in grade 1, you're starting to work with, they should already know how to count. You're beginning to understand the concept of adding, which is no longer counting. So grade 4, or actually epsilon would be around the 5th level. So they don't have grades in MathUSee as well. It goes by alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, and then they do pre-algebra, algebra, and so on, up until high school. You can stay with MathUSee from kindergarten all the way up until high school. But you can jump in, well, it's difficult to jump into MathUSee because if you were to jump in at, say, epsilon, which is all fractions, a whole year of fractions, but you never really learned multiplication, you can't go forward. You'd have to go back. So the tricky part with MathUSee is you really have to get in early, or whatever topics your student already masters. Anything above that, you wouldn't repeat. You'd go back to the point where they have mastery and start at that level. So they do have a test online where you can find out what level your student is at, and you put them in at that level or even a level before, just to make sure, because Stephen Demi, who is the math teacher, and you watch a video lesson and learn all math through him, and then you as the teacher will then go over the concepts with your student also if it's necessary. Sometimes it's not. In fact, so far for us, we have not needed to go any further in understanding the concepts. He does an excellent job. Short videos, no more than like 7-8 minute long videos. He goes over the concept, and then you get time to practice it together and then do their work pages. The lessons aren't long. There's daily practice. And so every day there'd be a lesson A, B, C, D, A, B, C, and then D, E, F are like review. They call it a systematic review, where they'll pull in previous things from other years. So because this is just all fractions, they still want you to review multiplication and long division, and they'll pull those things in and put them into their systematic reviews. And then there's finally an end test if you want to do testing. And then they have unit tests where you will then study, there's 30 units, so 30 lessons. Then you will do a unit test where it's going to test you on all the things from lessons 1 to 8, and then 8 to 16 and so forth, or 9 to 16 and so forth. And so there's tons of review. So it's mastery, yet it is also spiraling back, and there's tons and tons of review, and there's more than enough review where they're not going to forget all the things that they learned in previous years. And so that is what we are using. There's probably tons and tons of MathUSee videos out there. So this is not a MathUSee review. I just wanted to explain. We are moving into that. It is, again, we're back in fractions. My daughter was doing really, really well, and had no issues with fractions in Beauty and Truth. But we were anxious to get started and get used to the teaching style of Stephen Demi. He does things in a conceptual way with lots of math manipulatives, but then it really solidifies the concepts, and then there's lots of opportunity to practice the procedures in the workbook. So it's a combination of conceptual and procedural math. But I wanted to make sure that she would understand the way that Mr. Demi teaches the concepts. And I'm glad that we did that, because he does teach a little bit differently, then again from Singapore, and then again from Beauty and Truth. Now, some of the ways that Beauty and Truth taught it, I actually preferred, but because I felt that Olivia understood the concept better that way. But Mr. Demi has a way of simplifying the concepts and breaking it down in bite-sized ways, and he will eventually make it more complex by the end. It will get quite complex by the end. We're about halfway through right now, and it's starting to pick up its pace, but we are liking it a lot, and it's working for us. So what I also wanted to talk about is it okay to switch math around? Like, was that crazy for me to just do 3 different math curriculums in the same year? Well, if you have students who are pretty good in math, both of my kids are pretty solid in math, and you will always come across hurdles that are a little harder for them to understand and a little harder for them to explain. But if in general, math is not overly challenging for them, switching from curriculum to curriculum, it might take a little bit of backfilling to do as you as the teacher to go in and make sure that there aren't gaps there. But when I recommend switching curriculum is if what you are working just is not working. So many homeschooling parents out there will tell you never switch, just stick with it. Eventually all the gaps will be filled in. Like all math curriculum, yes, they all teach adding, subtracting, multiplying, division, fractions, decimals, pre-algebra. They all teach those things at some point in the whole curriculum. So you aren't going to miss out on those things. But the actual math facts are not the only part of a math curriculum. How it's taught and what resources a math curriculum give you as the teacher are so important. What I realized about Singapore math was, yes, they taught in a conceptual way that really helped students to understand math at a deeper level than most other math curriculum out there. It did not really explain well for the teacher how to teach those concepts. If you couldn't on your own expand beyond what they were providing for you there, if that just wasn't working, then what were you going to do? And there wasn't enough for you there. I actually am part of a Facebook group for Singapore math, and that is a big question. They're all asking for other video, and there's someone who does who is a curriculum writer for Singapore math, for primary mathematics, who provides videos that you can buy, and she will help teach those concepts for you. But if you as a teacher just want to teach it, you need a manual, a teacher's manual that will enable you to teach it in other ways, that will provide you that information. And Singapore math just didn't have that scripted guide to help you as a teacher teach it. And so that is where I found it lacking. So of course for grade 1, 2, 3, 4, I should be able to know those things. I shouldn't struggle over what's 2 plus 2. I should be able to figure out how to teach those in different ways to help my students. But as it progresses, grade 5, grade 6, pre-algebra, if you need help to teach those, Singapore math is very challenging as a teacher, to know how to teach it, to help explain it better to your students if they're not getting it. But MathUSee is broken down in this extreme incremental approach, the way Beauty and Truth does it, that at some point it will just click for your students. And there's so much review and so much practice that there's just enough for you there. So that is what we've done. We have switched. I still love Beauty and Truth. We are still going to be supplementing with Beauty and Truth up until they don't have any levels for us, because I love the scripted approach. And what I love is the way that you have to talk out the concepts. It's one thing to be able to show your work, but how do you explain it verbally? How do you use your words? Because when we use our words to explain something, it really solidifies the meaning of the mathematical concepts in your brain. It really does. And I saw that happening with my daughter. So I really love this scripted approach and say, now explain to me why it is that way in your own words. What does this actually mean? What does this concept mean? And it really helps to bring it to life and explain it in the real world, what these math concepts mean and what they're for and how you might use them. So I do still want to use Beauty and Truth. I highly recommend it. Many math curriculum out there only go to grade 5, 6. Same with Singapore math. Some of their dimensions only goes to grade 6. Primary mathematics, I think, only goes to grade 7 or maybe 8. And so they all, at some point, you have to move on to other curriculum. So that's not a drawback. If you still want to try Beauty and Truth, I love it. And if they had everything up until high school, I would not have switched. But I am very happy with MathUSee. Did not buy all the manipulatives through MathUSee. I already had several math manipulatives. I didn't buy the fraction cards that they use because my daughter already understood those parts of the fractions. I will probably have to buy them when it comes time for my younger daughter. But you don't have to do everything as the curriculum does it. But I find the videos very helpful. It kind of frees me up to help with another student while my one child is watching a video, the other one will be doing. So it does free you up as the teacher a little bit as well, which is nice. And the lessons aren't overly long. It's not a drag to try to get through. Like I've heard Saxon Math just has really long workbook pages, tons and tons of questions to get through that can really burn out your students. So MathUSee is not like that. And we're really loving it so far. You may find, who knows, in a few months I'm doing another math curriculum. Probably not, because this one is all the solutions that I was looking for have been solved. It's gradual enough for us. All the teaching materials are there for me. It's teacher friendly, and it goes all the way up until grade 12. Those are the things I was looking for, and that it's conceptual, because that's very important. If you're not using a conceptual math and they're just learning procedures, they're really going to struggle with math in the future and using it in an application in the future, because you will get different questions. You may know how to do this question, but what if you're given a new problem? How do you apply concepts if you don't know the concept? So conceptual math is definitely key. But that's all I have for you. I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.